Shradachandra Sundaramukam Tamraravindekshana Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamatrojvalam Swatmanandarasanubhuti Sarvanavadyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramanishwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramanishwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramanishwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramanishwaram Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yahamahamitti Sakshatatmarupena Bhati Hridi Vishamanasa Swam Chinvata Majjatava Pavana Chalana Rodha Atmanishto Bhavatvam. Namo Ramana. We will commence the Friday Atma Vicharam by first listening and meditating on Bhagavan's Upadesham. And we have been reading Bhagavan's Upadesham from the book Ramana Answers, Self Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the questions put to Bhagavan on the subject matter of Atma Vichara, self-enquiry, and Bhagavan's answers to them. This wonderful compilation has been done by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. And we have been looking at the self-enquiry questions put to Bhagavan between 1936 to 1950. And we have reached the 92nd question. After meditating on this question and answer, we will have a 20 minutes self-enquiry practice. After that, our President Sarada Akka would be talking on Ramana Gita, which is nothing but self-enquiry. It's again questions and answers put to Bhagavan, and they have been compiled in Sanskrit by Ganapathi Muni. And Akka would be talking about those questions and answers and meditating on it. Finally, we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. In the last 2-3 weeks, we have been contemplating on this question and answer, where a devotee wants to ask Bhagavan, or is asking Bhagavan, how can I make sure that I hold on to the self at a length? And Bhagavan initially starts by explaining that, like, how we actually don't take the dream to be serious upon waking. Likewise, there will be, when we wake to the self, or that means when we recognize ourselves as the self, the whole of this waking appears to be nothing but a dream. And he continues to show, give an example, an analogy Like how the froth in the water is nothing but water, but appears separate because of its shape and everything. Eventually, when it breaks open, actually becomes nothing but the water. But the devotee goes on to claim, as was his original question, that I don't still identify myself with the self, or I don't identify myself with the water. I feel I am the froth, and what should I do about it? And finally, Bhagavan asks him to cease identification with the unreal and identify something which is real. And in that firmness, all the doubts will vanish. Further, Bhagavan said, the wrong imagination and the truth has to be recognized. The wrong imagination that I am the froth has to be given up. The truth that I am the water has to be identified. So this week's question 92 and the subsequent question 93 is a continuation of the same discussion by the devotee. And the devotee is asking, if I dive in, I shall find. So it's Bhagavan says, yes, quite right. It was said because you are identifying yourself with the froth and not the water. Because of this confusion, the answer was meant to draw your attention to this confusion and bring it home to you. All that is meant is that the self is infinite, inclusive of all that you see. There is nothing beyond it, nor apart from it. Knowing this, you will not desire anything. Not desiring, you will be content. We will look at Bhagavan's answer once again. The question is, if I dive in, I shall find. Bhagavan says, yes, quite right. It was said because you are identifying yourself with the froth and not the water. Because of this confusion, the answer was meant to draw your attention to this confusion and bring it home to you. All that is meant is that the self is infinite, inclusive of all that you see. There is nothing beyond it, nor apart from it. Knowing this, you will not desire anything. Not desiring, you will be content. Now, the most important part of the answer of Bhagavan I felt here is to bring our attention to the confusion, he says. Now, that is where the whole problem lies. The confusion that I see a froth which is nothing but water as something separate from water, and there is a clear distinction in our concept that the froth is separate and the water is separate, and the froth has to do something. This has to do or has to know something, has to become something which is water. That confusion, Bhagavan says, is what the attention has to be brought into. And because of that confusion, we say, I have to dive within. So this confusion is something that we should be very, very watchful of, Bhagavan says here. Now, in this Wednesday Satsang, Nanda Kumar ji was talking about Nididhyasana, the practice. Whenever the practice of this, when should we practice? Whenever the confusion arises. The Shravana is knowing that absolutely, Bhagavan is saying here, all that is meant is that the self is infinite, inclusive of all that you see. The self is infinite and inclusive of all that we see. Very clearly we have to understand. In a sense, if two fishes were swimming in the ocean and some let us say, a knowledgeable fish or a gnani fish were to swim next to it and say, how is water? And if these two fishes say, where is water? What is he talking about? No, the water is everywhere. And the fish are not able to identify with it. So it is like that when Bhagavan is very clearly saying, we know that Bhagavan would have not lied. He's saying it is the infinite inclusive of all that you see. All that we see is nothing but the self. But we don't identify with it. We identify with the confusions. Now that is where Bhagavan is bringing our attention. And Bhagavan, being Bhagavan the Guru, he has also made it so simple for us to identify how the confusion starts. He says the confusion starts in the form of a thought. So all thoughts are nothing but confusions. That means we see some separateness. And because we have experienced some separateness, therefore we have a thought. Even the question, to whom is this? That means there is a subject and an object division. And therefore, this question seems to be valid. To whom is this? And when I say it is for me, I, then again the question, who am I, is again a division that I am this body and there is something else which may be there, something deep down, like I have to dive in, as the person is saying here. Now, that division. So whenever there is this confusion, then the knowledge has to be brought in, which is that everything is inclusive, infinite self. And one has to abide in that. So the manana is to return back to it. So the returning back happens through this enquiry. And the nididhyasana happens by abiding in that self that we are. Now, in that self, obviously, since it is inclusive of everything, it cannot be that there cannot be any division. Like I don't go on reminding myself that this is my right hand, this is my left hand, this is my arms, this is my ears, this is my nose. It is very inclusive. It is so inclusive that I don't have any doubts about it. But I may have very much a doubt to include somebody apart from me as myself. Now that is where we need to, the question is, the confusion is. And Bhagavan is saying, all is this infinite inclusive. And here I am seeing this difference. Now that difference is created by what? It is only created by a thought that I am only limited to this and that is separate. That is the idea which is limiting us from that other thing. So this has to be inquired into, says Bhagavan here. Therefore, what we have to understand here is when we say really inclusive, there will be no thoughts of inclusive, no thoughts of exclusive. Because if we have a thought of exclusive, if we may consider everything is inclusive except the bubble, it is exclusive. That means then we have not actually understood what is real total inclusiveness, isn't it? So there cannot be any thought of inclusiveness, there cannot be any thought of exclusiveness. There has to be that thought-free state. Then and then alone is the real inclusiveness. And therefore, Bhagavan doesn't say knowing. Whenever he says knowing in Upadesha Saram, he says it is very clearly the being that, and the self, the pure being consciousness, the I am, which doesn't say I am this or I am that, the pure shining of that I am. In everything, it is experienced as consciousness is experienced as presence. Even if a thought is there, we have the consciousness to recognize it. We feel that it is real, it exists. So actually what we are experiencing continuously is ourself, the pure being I am. But the thought makes this confusion as though it is different. Now that is where Bhagavan is saying, then you have to inquire inside, outside, all of this. But if we see the actual experience of ours, it is nothing but the self alone which is there, and it is the inclusive. It doesn't have any thought, it doesn't have any bheda naturally. And that is where, and being as that is the real knowing, says Bhagavan. And being that is the real inclusiveness of everything. And therefore, Bhagavan is saying, when we recognize it that way, there will be no desire. And since there is none who sees separateness, and then therefore desire something or find aversion in something, then only the pure contentment will come. That is why Bhagavan is asking us to inquire, to see for ourselves, to experience for ourselves what one really is. And the questions, to whom is this, who am I, is begging us to turn and look very clearly, experientially, because this is aparoksha, direct experience. This is the direct experience of ourself is the self. Alone is the direct experience. All other things are indirectly experienced. It experienced through ears or through nose or eyes and everything else. But the self is experienced directly. And therefore, all of us are directly experiencing the self, but we have taken it for granted and taken the thoughts and all these divisions to be more real. And therefore we talk of knowing, doing, and inside, outside, desire, aversion, all these things. And Bhagavan is saying, but the self is inclusive of all of it. And therefore, by only inquiring, is that we find who we really are. So, with the abundant grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path, for the next 20 minutes, no matter how many thoughts come, and whatever may be the nature of thought, whether it is good, bad, or ugly, invariably it starts because of an idea of division, the thought being the object and I being the perceiver of the thought. There is that division. Therefore, by inquiring to whom is this thought, recognizing it is for me, and who am I, what do I refer to as I within me? Because I identify myself as this name and form. Therefore, the question, who am I, what do I really refer to as I? Or where from this I thought rises within me, brings me, that inquiry brings me into that one infinite, inclusive truth, where there is absolutely no divisions and therefore no desires or aversions, no duality, no divisions. And in that state, there is total contentment, ananda, says Bhagavan. with the abundant grace of Him, for the next 20 minutes, let us practice Atma Vichara. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Over to Sarada.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. With the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we in this part of the satsang are meditating on Bhagavan's teachings as recorded by Muni in Ramana Gita. This is in 18 chapters on the lines of the Bhagavat Gita, and they are answers to questions by Bhagavan, answers to the questions of various seekers of truth. And Muni has classified them according to the questions into various chapters. We have been blessed to complete 9 chapters, and we are now meditating on we will commence meditating on the 10th chapter, which is called Sangha Vidya. It is about society. Yatino Yoganathasya Mahashiramanasya cha Dashameta Nibhagnima Samvadam Sanghaharshadam. Muni says, this chapter gives joy to the society. Sangha Harshadam. The questioner is Yoganatha Yati. The ascetic Yoganatha, the sannyasi Yoganatha, has asked this question of Bhagavan. So what was Yoganatha's question pertaining to society? Sangikasya cha sanghasya kassambandho mahamune sanghasya shreyase natha tametam vartumarhasi sanghasya shreyase natha tametam vaktumarhasi. Sanghikasya cha sanghasya kassambandho. What is the relationship between the society and the individual who abides or lives in the society? And what is the relationship between them? Kassambandho, Mahamune, O great sage, what is the relationship between the society and the individual? Please give me an answer which is for the good, for the welfare of the society, says Yoganatha. Sanghasya shreyase natha tametam vaktumarhasi. So what does Bhagavan say? Ngeya sharira vatsangas tattadachara shalinam angani vatra vigneya sangika sadhu sattamaha. He says the relationship between the individual and the society is like the relationship between a limb and the whole body. The limb and the whole body. Any organ in the body and the whole body. What a limb or an organ is to the body, so the individual is to society, says Bhagavan. Angam yatha sharirasya karotyupakritim yate tathopakaram sanghasya kurvan jayati sanghikaha. Just as a limb in the body or an organ in the body prospers by working for the good of the entire body, an individual becomes victorious. An individual becomes successful by working for the good of the entire society, says Bhagavan. So here we find the application or it could be in one way a sadhana that is supplementary to self-inquiry. In another way, it could be seen as a sadhana which is an application of the practice of self-inquiry. When one practices self-inquiry, what is it that one recognizes? One recognizes that this individuality is actually meaningless. The individuality is a non-entity. The individuality doesn't exist at all. Through the practice of self-inquiry, we begin to understand, when we understand that the body is not I. It is powered by some other Shakti, by some other supreme force. It is powered by that. It is not its own power. It doesn't have consciousness of its own. It cannot work on its own. It is powered by prana, and ultimately it is powered by consciousness. The entire system of what we call I am this, I am this, I am this body, I am an individual, I am all these thoughts, I am all these tendencies. We think in this manner. But we recognize through self-inquiry that none of this is really stemming from us as a power, as an energy. There is some other energy which is powering everything. So what am I in relation to that energy? What am I in relation to that power? What are my thoughts in relation to that? What is my entire life in relation to that supreme power? That question comes into our minds. Very often, when a person does self-inquiry, they may wonder. When the thoughts arise and we realize, we first say, these thoughts are mine, we say. But as we go deeper into self-inquiry and we ask ourselves, who am I? We recognize that there is no such entity at all. There is no little figure sitting inside. There is no form. There is not even a subtle form sitting inside who is carrying out all these things, all these activities. To whom are we attributing all this? When we ask ourselves the question, who am I? Bhagavan tells us in Upadesha Saram that he will tell later to Ramana Gita. But then here also, right from the beginning, be it to Gambiram Sheshayar or Siva Prakasham Pillai or Muni, he says that when one searches for the source of the mind, Manasam tu kim margani krite naiva manasam. There is no such thing called the mind. There is no such cohesive entity called mind. It is not one entity. It is merely a conglomeration, a coming together of various thoughts. It may be called a bundle of thoughts. It's just a putting together of thoughts, and they are not even similar in nature. They sometimes may be similar, sometimes they may be dissimilar. So all these thoughts are there. When all these thoughts go away, then who am I? There is no such thing as a mind. And if there is no such thing as a mind, if thoughts are non-existent, then who is the thinker? A thinker is one who thinks. But when thoughts do not exist, then who is a thinker? When I myself am not existent as an entity, what can I do in this world? What is my relationship? What am I going to contribute? How am I going to act in any way? Are actions coming from my power? Are thoughts coming from my power? Then what is my role? Is my role that of merely watching? If the thoughts are springing up from the source and they are all just merging into the self, they are rising by the power of the self, they are merging into the self, then what is my role? Dileep often says, do I know what is going to be my next thought? I do not even know what is going to be my next thought. Then how do I say that I am powering my thoughts? If I am not powering my thoughts, then what is my role here? Maybe the first question. Then I think, okay, my role may be simply to watch and enjoy, simply to watch the show, watch every thought, every experience as it arises, as it is sustained, as it subsides, simply watch it rise. From where does it rise? From where does it, into where does it subside? And then remain. So, ultimately, even watching is not required, because watching is an activity only when thoughts are there. When thoughts are not there, who am I? Am I a watcher? Am I a thinker? No, I am not a thinker. I am not active. I am not even a watcher when there are no thoughts. So, what happens to the I at that time? It becomes just subservient. It has to merge into the source. It understands that all this, anything that is manifest, is only a part of the immense Shakti, immense power. Similarly, similar to an organ in a body. Can an organ in a body function on its own? It cannot function on its own. And there are some living beings where, where one part of the body is cut off, the other part, the limb or the tail or something, it will keep moving for some time due to the momentum. And that is part of camouflage, nature's camouflage, and it moves. But there may appear to be life even in a, they say that, even if a finger or something gets cut off from the body, if you immediately, there is life in it for some time. And you can immediately rejoin it if it's not crushed or if it's not broken. You can put it back in the proper way through plastic surgery, and the nerves can get reconnected to that part of the body if it gets cut off due to an accident. For some time, a very short time, it continues, the life force continues in that. So, but then by itself, there is no organ, though every organ may be indispensable to the whole even. If you take out the heart, the body cannot live. If you take out the liver, the body cannot live. But the liver without a body, can it do anything? It can't do anything. Even the brain cannot do anything without the body. So without the whole, and Bhagavan says, when we recognize this is our place in society, we belong to the whole. We are not, it is not as if the whole belongs to us. It is that we belong to the whole. We are here for the sake of the whole. We are not there for our own sakes. When we start functioning in this manner, understanding that our meaningfulness is only with reference to the whole, and when we start behaving in this manner, Bhagavan says, then we become victorious. He doesn't say society becomes victorious. He says we become victorious. Then he says, how should we behave in society? Sanghasya vāngmanah kāye upakaro yatha bhavet swayam tatha charan nityam swakiyanapi bodhayet. One should serve the interests of society through body, speech and mind. Vāng mana kāye upakaro. One should serve the interests of society. Because for what purpose is this body here? For what purpose are we here? When everything is happening by the divine design, when we have no control over anything, when we are not the doers, when we are total non-entities, why should we be here and what is it that we have to do? And when Bhagavan is saying this, Look at his life. For what purpose did that young boy, 16-year-old boy, who had become absolutely, perfectly established in the self, with no wavering whatsoever, why should he undertake the most difficult journey to come to Arunachala? Why should he undertake the penance, the austerity of living without a naya paisa, without a place of his own, without sometimes a second loin cloth to wear or a second towel to wipe his hands? Why should he continue? What did he continue for? It is only this. It was his whole life was just an offering to Arunachala to do the greatest good to the entire society. So Bhagavan says, whatever we do, let it be for the good of the society. And Bhagavan says, not only that, Swayam tatha acharan nityam, Swayam tatha acharan nityam. One should practice this always. One should practice this always. Swakiyanapi bodhayet. One should tell our own people, all those who are close to us, please do good to the society. Please do good to others. Live for the good of the whole. Don't worry only about yourself. Don't be selfish. He says we should treat this we should share this with everyone. Anukulena sangasya sapayitva nijam kulam sanghasya tato bhutyir kuryat bhutiyutam kulam. Finally he says one should build one's own circle, inner circle, and make it prosper. So Bhagavan says it is right to do good. What is the inner circle? The inner circle is one's family. The inner circle is then one's workplace. The inner circle may be one's own, whatever is a similar, say, birds of a feather flock together. It may be one part of a society. It may be one community which we belong to, or one place which we belong to. This is the inner circle. So he says one should make one's inner circle prosper. Why? Not simply, why should the family prosper? Not for the family to become richer and richer and richer, so that it may serve the interest of society. And the society may also prosper. So if we have to work for the good of the inner circle. What is the first inner circle? The body. What is the first inner circle? Our own mind. There is one body, he says. The body is society. So one should keep the body in good condition. Minimum attention needed for it. One should keep the mind in good condition. What is the best way to keep the mind in good condition? The society called the mind. Do self-enquiry, says Bhagavan. Then the mind will be in good condition. When the mind is in good condition, when our society, inner circle, this body, mind, this individual, which is a society in itself, which is inner circle, which is in good condition, there is peace within, around us in the family, there will be peace, there will be joy, there will be acceptance gradually, and there will be, whenever there is any conflict, we will be able to share with them. Let us work for the good of the whole. To the extent that they are able to be part of it, they can become part of it. We can share it with them. The next inner circle is, as I said, the family, and then it can keep on expanding. The inner circle itself can expand until Bhagavan says it. Then our whole earth is our family. All living beings are our family. Vasudeva Kutumbakam, it is said. The entire universe is our family. So that's how it expands. The expansion of good, the expansion of consciousness is one of the methods which is given in the tradition. And Bhagavan is giving us this beautiful Upadesha with reference to our role in the society. Our role in society is just to be able to do whatever we can. Whatever we can. Whatever we can is what? Whatever the Supreme allows us to do. But if we do not have any concerns for ourselves, but we have concerns only to be able to play our role well, automatically it will happen, because grace supports Shubha Ichcha, says Bhagavan. When there is any good intention, grace supports it, and already he has told us, be established in the self. That is the highest good for yourself and for everyone. So if we put 2 and 2 together, what should we do? We should be established in the self, so that it is the highest good for the inner circle and the highest good for the society. We should be able to serve society by being established in the self. That's the best service we can do. We need to serve society. What's the best service we can do? We can be established in the self. And by Bhagavan's grace, that is where he is taking us. That is his promise. That is the certainty. Om Namo Bhagavate.
Namo Apara Satchit Sukhavarirashi Yasyor Mimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gaviram Chinta Vihinam Hrudi Chintayami Chinta Vihinam Hrudi Chintayami. Varnaka, thank you.